Welcome to The Buff Show on the American Adversaries Radio Network. Glad you can join us. Segment 3 for the week. And this is an exciting time to be with us. I tell you what, we're brought to you in conjunction with Halscott Magaro Appellate Law Firm. You can visit them on appealslawgroup.com. They're responsible for this awesome studio we're in. If you're in trouble, appealslawgroup.com. And also, of course, we're brought to you in conjunction with the American Adversaries Radio Show. You can listen to that show every Sunday through Friday, live at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. You can listen on AmericanAdversaries.com. Just click on the Listen Live button at the top there. Or if you're here in Central Florida, you can listen over the airwaves on AM 950 and FM 94.9. I am Matt Buff, and I am joined by the host and founder of the American Adversaries Radio Show. And this is the philosopher and political mad scientist, Christopher Hart. Good to see you, my friend, for part 3.
Good to see you, Matt. Good to see you. By the way, you can catch the radio show on our Facebook page, too. That's American Adversaries on Facebook every afternoon there. So,
yes, indeed. Facebook is one of our most popular venues because we stream the shows. The night shows are streamed on the Facebook page as well. Yeah. And we also put this podcast on there, too. You know, there's all kinds of numbers we've been talking about. In the last segment, we talked about the 45,000 now death toll that's on your news tickers every time you watch TV and just ravaging our country. And who would say what the real number is? I mean, you can do a Vegas odds on how many of those people actually only died from the China virus. The underlying conditions play a big role in this. And if you get hit by a car and test positive for COVID-19, you still got hit by a car. Now, there was a study done in California and LA County, and USC did a report that show, death rates are actually lower and higher cases of positive people are healthy now. This little herd immunity project that they were talking about actually did pretty well, Chris.
Well, actually, we've been talking about this from very early on in this coronavirus calamity.
Yes.
On the radio show, we were saying that the numbers just don't add up. That either this was not nearly as contagious as we were being told, or it was either a lot more contagious and therefore not nearly as deadly as we were being told. And it turns out it looks like it was the latter, not the former. That this is highly contagious. And there's been several studies now using antibody tests and surveying in order to come to these conclusions. The first one that garnered some attention was out of Stanford University in California, yes. For Santa Clara County, where they tested and surveyed 5,000 people. And what their conclusions were is that the virus moved through much earlier than was predicted or was thought, and that also that it was at least 55 to 85 times more virulent. In other words, that many more people had actually contracted the disease than what the cases were showing. So in other words, when you look at the television and you see for the United States, I believe today it was somewhere around 800,000 cases, 750 to 800,000. What they're saying is for the nation, multiply that by 55 to 85 times, and that will tell you the actual number of people who had been infected. And if that's the case, they're talking somewhere around 50, 60, 70 million people nationwide had contracted the virus.
But here's why you don't freak out.
Because most of the people, it was harmless. Many of them showed no symptoms, so-called asymptomatic. Others showed mild symptoms. And then, of course, what the CDC would say, and yes, this is why it's so bad, is because people can carry it around, can transmit it without even knowing it. And that's the case. That's absolutely the case. But we see what is also the case is, and you mentioned the death toll, and that is that the people who are dying from this are people who, 99% of them, have other serious health complications. For instance, the local newspaper here on Sunday did a headline story, the main headline story, talking about who in Central Florida is dying from the virus. 63% are men. 82% have heart disease, which helps to explain why more men die, because more men suffer from heart disease. 82% had heart disease, already a serious complication. I think 32% had COPD, and about the same percentage had diabetes. Virtually no one who died was healthy. Even the children who have died of this disease and actually caused by the disease had serious health complications. Believe it or not, children can have serious health complications. They can have diabetes. They can have other things. And so what we have found is, indeed, this is a deadly virus, but not nearly as deadly as we were led to believe, and that it could have been perhaps contained without the draconian measures that most states and most countries around the world have taken. And California seems to be a case in point, because it very much indicates, what these studies indicate, is that this Wuhan flu tore through, as they say, ripped through California in December, January, and February. As a matter of fact, this morning, this was after a couple of days ago, we started talking on the show. The death numbers are misleading because, for one, they're overcounting the deaths now. But
they said they would do that and have been doing it. It's not like we're making that up. You can hear Dr. Bergs, you can hear Cuomo, you can hear a bunch of them say it.
But there's a flip side to that. They undercounted the deaths back in December, January, and February. You see, because they didn't really realize what was going on. People were being diagnosed with flu when it was actually COVID-19. We may never know the true numbers, but what we do know is that what this has all done, when it's all said and done, it is turned what was going to be a fairly low year in deaths attributed to the seasonal flu into more of an average to above average year. In other words, on an average year, we lose about 50, 60,000 people to seasonal flu. This year, it was going to be down around 20, 25,000. But lo and behold, COVID-19 came along and took up the mantle from there, you might say, and has brought us up to a normal season. But the question then becomes, were the efforts to flatten the curve effective or too late? Or was it a futile effort to begin with?
Or did they slow the virus down and keep it around longer?
Or prolong it?
Yeah. Now, go back to California real quick when you're talking about death rates. A study came out in California where...
And by the way, that L.A. County death, that was the USC, University of Southern California.
That's what we mentioned there. But when you were talking about Stanford, there were several studies going on around there, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But an overall report came out of California that said they've only had 4 more deaths per capita year.
Yeah, and it appears, once again, they would have been one of the earlier states to be infected, because being on the West Coast, a lot of traffic back and forth between China and the West Coast there, Seattle, it all, fits the model that we now can put together, that we have some actual numbers to go with. But see, this is what I believe that the Chinese also understood early on, and how they, in a fashion, weaponized it against the rest of the world. They knew it was highly contagious, so it could be very scary. They also, however, knew that it could be treated, because they're very good with hydroxychloroquine. They make the stuff, and been treating people in China for malaria with it since the 50s. And they also knew that the death rate was primarily going to be the weakest of the society. So they knew that if they could kind of package this in a way that let out just enough information, but not too much, that it could set off a pandemic panic. And in fact, it worked better than I believe they ever thought it would. But, we're going to have to take that up on the other side, because he
wasn't describing Chernobyl right there.
No, we are describing a purposeful act in what I would characterize as a warm war with China.
Absolutely. And that's what a lot of people are starting to say out there.
So we'll talk about that next.
Yes, but real quick, on when you're watching your local news reports and they say death related to COVID instead of just COVID, that means underlying issue. And you're seeing that more than ever. What also you're seeing more than ever is people getting in trouble for silly things out there. And if you need to appeal that case, you need to call Hal Scott and McGarrell Law Firm. That's where we're broadcasting from. And visit them at appealslawgroup.com. Don't forget to listen to the American Adversaries radio show every Sunday through Friday, live at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. You can listen to that on AmericanAdversaries.com or over the airwaves in Central Florida at AM 950, FM 94.9. Don't forget to share videos, share and like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Matt Buff and Christopher Hart saying, stay smart out there.